In A Slice of Infinity, Ravi Zacharias was talking about this whole concept that Solomon has been trying to tell us so far in the book of Ecclesiastes. And so he mentions him. And he says, does it not surprise you that after years of experimenting and indulging, that Solomon said that it amounted to nothing? That all of the things that he was trying to fill the empty void in his heart, to find the inner peace, to find the inner joy, it was grasping after the wind. And you can't catch the wind. And even if you could catch it, there's nothing there if you were to catch it. See, Solomon's was not just a harem-filled world of sensuality. He was an artistic genius who penned thousands of proverbs and songs. We miscast him if we forget that he had an immense creative capacity. Thinking about this idea of finding satisfaction in things other than God and finding your life's fulfillment in things other than God, psychologists Frank Minirth and Paul Meyer talked about people that have come in to talk to them in their clinic. This is how they describe them. They said, we are convinced that many people do choose happiness, but still do not obtain it. The reason for this is that even though they choose to be happy, they seek for inner peace and joy in the wrong places. They seek for joy in sexual prowess, but end up with fleeting pleasures and bitter long-term disappointment. They seek inner fulfillment by obtaining positions of power, but they remain unfulfilled. And one of them said, I have had millionaire businessmen come to my office and tell me that they have big houses, yachts, nice children, a beautiful mistress, an unsuspecting wife, secure corporate positions, and suicidal tendencies. What the world deems all the necessary things for one to have, yet they have suicidal tendencies. They have everything this world has to offer except one thing, inner peace and joy. They come to my office as a last resort, begging me to help them conquer the urge to kill themselves. Ravi continues, so this is difficult fact to accept when one has not lived it. In other words, been in the position of these millionaires. Yet this ought to cause us to stop and take note of the fact that where unbridled pleasure abounds, there is greater need to find life's overarching purpose. It is purpose that is prior, that's before, and pleasure that must be in keeping. In other words, purpose comes first, pleasure follows after. And let us be sure that if the purpose is wrong, then pleasure gets wrong-headed too. Solomon wants to explain to us, what does the life that is well lived, what does it look like? How are we supposed to manage it according to God has laid out in his word? Solomon embarks now on an experiment. It literally is a scientific experiment to find purpose in life. To answer the question, what is lasting? What endures the test of time? What brings inner satisfaction, joy, and peace? So he's launching on an experiment like a good scientist. He's going to lay out all these things for us and then give us his conclusion. And in chapter 2, Solomon wants us to understand that true, lasting joy comes from the well-lived life. And that's a life that's ordained by God. In other words, God has prescribed it. God has given us in his word, revealed to us exactly what the well-lived life looks like. So that we can, at the end of our days, go out into eternity saying, I have lived the life ordained to me by God, as God has prescribed it, and I have found true joy and satisfaction. God has revealed to us that we would know these things. And you know, I became a Christian at age 19, and I had a lot to learn, and I wasted a lot of time. So I'm thinking of some of the young people that are here today, putting some of these principles into your life right now, this well-lived life, this well-ordered life. As you get to the end of your life, you'll say, thank you, God, for giving me the directions that made this life what it was supposed to be. I wish I would have had that when I was younger. In this section, Solomon describes his experiment with pleasure. He's going to start off with pleasure and accomplishments in the first part of that. And he says, listen, it was a total failure to bring satisfaction. All the pleasures and all the accomplishments I had, it didn't bring me what I was looking for. So he lays it out for us here right now in verses 1 through 11. I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. But behold, this is also vanity. It's empty, it's fleeting, it's temporary, it's transitory. All the pleasures fade. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? I search with my heart how to cheer my body with wine, my heart still guiding me with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, that's foolish, that's being silly, till I might see what was good for the children of man to do under heaven during the few days of their life. I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks and planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself pools from which to water the forest of growing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had slaves who were born in my house. I had also great possessions of herds and flocks, more than any who had been before me in Jerusalem. This is it. This is the pinnacle of what the world says is success. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and the treasure of kings and provinces. I got singers, both men and women, and many, many concubines, the delight of the sons of man. So I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me. And whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in all my toil. And this was my reward for all my toil. Then I considered all that my hands had done and the toil I had expended in doing it. And behold, his conclusion, all was vanity and a striving after the wind. And there was nothing to be gained under the sun. So his first experiment is with pleasure and great accomplishments. Will these bring satisfaction in my life? So he embarks on this experiment. He's trying to find joy in lasting joy in pleasant living and luxurious living and riches and comfortable surroundings, all the things that he made for himself. The experiment is to see whether pleasures provide an adequate justification for human existence. In other words, are they the end in themselves, pleasures? Does that bring my life to a complete existence? Do I have everything I need by experiencing these pleasures? Are they an end in themselves, is the question. Are they what I'm searching for? So he employs a controlled experiment here to test pleasure. He's bringing pleasure under the microscope and saying, is this satisfying? Is this what I'm looking for? Now, these are sensual pleasures that delight the senses but are not sinful. Okay, we're not talking about things that are sinful. So we're talking about things that are pleasant to the senses. That's the sight, the hearing, the smelling, the tasting, the feeling. That which is pleasurable to the senses. For example, I love to eat. Food tastes great. And when Teresa makes a really excellent meal, which is most of the time, thank you. That was probably better said. Some are better than others. Some are better than others. So as I'm sitting there eating the food that she has made, all of these spices that she has used in preparation of this meal, they all come out and they all complement each other. And I enjoy eating. I really like to eat because it tastes good. That's what I'm talking about. That's not sinful. No, we're not talking about gluttony. That would be sinful. But we're talking about just eating, pleasurable. Sex inside of marriage is a pleasurable thing that God has designed. It's pleasurable. These are what we're talking about are things that please the senses, but that are not sinful in their activity. So I love looking at a beautiful sunset or smelling a beautiful flower. These are what we're talking about. These kind of pleasures. So not sinful things, but things that we enjoy in life. So what he does to us up front in verse number 2, he gives us a conclusion to the whole experiment. He's going to give us a conclusion, then he's going to lay out exactly what he did in the experiment, but he gives us a conclusion right up front is, all life's joys are fleeting. If I make the end of my existence pleasure and accomplishments, it's all fleeting. In fact, even in laughter, the heart may still ache. He said, laughter, it's mad. It's just a mad thing. Why? Because even in laughter, our heart can ache. In Proverbs 14, we read this, even in laughter, the heart may ache, and the end of joy may be grief. Far too many times people will laugh, and wholesale laughter is a good thing, but far too many times they laugh to cover up a deep pain inside of them. The partaking of pleasure is not guaranteed to give meaning to life, is what Solomon wants us to understand. What's also important for us to understand here, he mentions it twice in the text I just read. He says, my heart is being guided by wisdom. It's really important. He indulged in these pleasures without being consumed by them. So he's not becoming a drunkard. He's not a debaucher person. He's a person that is controlled by wisdom. That's important to understand here. He's controlled by wisdom. So would drinking parties and drinking, would they answer the question of the emptiness of life? Would that be it? No, he didn't become a drunk. He wanted to see if rationally controlled indulgences and pleasure would give meaning to life. Again, he's controlled by his wisdom. That's important for us to understand. He was investigating the pleasure of drinking good wine. He was a connoisseur of wine. So he's not getting drunk. He's not drinking a whole, well, I guess there's no bottles in those days, a flagon of wine. He'll have a glass or two, and he wants to enjoy the taste of it. Does this bring satisfaction to life? He wants to cheer his body with wine. Since he maintained his wisdom, he did not go berserk in his quest for luxury and pleasure. We would call it moderated, in moderation. So he's not going to extremes. He's not a drunkard. He's not just consuming all kinds of wine and falling over drunk. That's not him. But he wanted to taste these things. Does the taste of this wine, does it bring me pleasure? And is this pleasure lasting? And then he says he made some enclosed gardens. Interesting word. Interesting word because it's a loan word from Persia. It's a Persian word and actually translated in the Septuagint, which is a Greek translation of the Old Testament. This word translated here in the Septuagint is the English word paradise. So the question is, was he trying to recreate the Garden of Eden? Was he trying to say that's when man was truly satisfied because he had a deep relationship with the Creator, God, and walked with him? So was he trying to create another Garden of Eden? Well, it doesn't work in a fallen world. The works that he did, notice what it says. How many times do you read it says, for myself? I made this for myself. I made this for myself. He didn't make it for the kingdom. He didn't make it for the people of the kingdom to go through his beautiful garden and enjoy it. He said, I made it for myself. I made this for myself. Notice the recurring phrase, myself. It all centered on him. The works that he did, they were not for the benefit of the kingdom. They were just for his own personal benefit. See, selfish enjoyment without thinking of others does not yield the supreme good. So now if he would have said, hey, I made this wonderful garden. I opened it up to the whole city of Jerusalem to experience and enjoy. That would be something different. But he said, no, I just made this for myself. I wanted to see if this accomplishment brought me satisfaction in life. Would it do it? Would it fill that inner need? And then he enjoyed sexual pleasures with his many wives and concubines. Now, again, before I read this passage, I need to just make it very clear. The ideal God set down was one man and one woman. Now, there were multiple marriages in the Old Testament. We've seen that. Here's an example of Solomon's life. Ready? He had 700 wives who were princesses and 300 concubines. I'm sure that he had no problem finding sexual pleasure with his wives when he had 700 of them. It would take him nearly 2 years to visit all of his wives one night. Again, the ideal is one man, one woman. That's the way that was established in the garden. Here we see that he did not live according to the ideal. Now, his experiment was successful. He did find pleasure in these things. But the question is, was it lasting? Should they be the end that I'm seeking? Or are they something else? But he's frustrated with the temporary value of everything that he accomplished. And even though Solomon found pleasure in his work, the value he assigned to it was a vanity. It was nothing. It's insubstantial. It's transitory. It's wearying. Now, he made pleasant gardens and he planted vineyards and everything that we read in that list, I don't think any of them are still in existence today. With the exception, perhaps, the pools that he made. And the pools they made, I saw pictures of them I was going to show you this morning, but I don't have confirmation that they were the actual pools he made. Some sources say they were made during the time of the Crusaders. So I didn't bring that to you. If that's the only thing that remained from everything he made. It's all gone. It's temporary. So when I'm reading this, I'm thinking, okay, well then, hey, I got the answer to this. I'm just going to sit home and not work anymore. Since it's all vanity, why do I need to work? That's not what God is saying. He's not saying that. See, the act of working is good. Work is good. The act of working is good. We were created to work. Man was created and placed in the garden to tend the garden, to cultivate the garden, to be in relationship with God and create a culture that's in relationship with God. So we're designed to be workers, to take God's stuff and make things out of it. You know, everything we make is just taking God's stuff and rearranging it in different ways. But that's how we were created. In working hard, there is great joy fulfilling God's desire for humans. So Solomon is not degrading work. That's not what he's doing. What he is trying to tell us is that very seldom the result of our work is lasting. The resultant of what we do is lasting. Now, immediately you may find an exception. I did. Immediately I thought about the pyramids. That's a resultant of somebody's work. They're lasting. But by and large, that is an exception. The things that have been made are no longer here. They're fleeting. They're temporary. They don't remain like the pyramids remain. By and large, the rule is that which we accomplish in this life is simply temporary. So how can I explain this? And I thought, okay, God gave me hopefully something to make it understandable for us. Since work is good, the act of working is good. But do I make the accomplishments I make the end to find satisfaction in life, like pleasure? Do I make them the ends? Let me see if I can explain this. Let's say that I'm a baker. Okay? I like to bake peach cobbler. So I'm going to take my creative ability to make a culinary delight, and I'm going to create a peach cobbler. Now, some of you are going, oh man, it's time for 4 Sunday fellowship already. Stay with me for a while, okay? I'll let you go in a little bit. So there's pleasure in the making of that cobbler. There's pleasure for me as the baker. So then I turn around and I sell that cobbler to somebody else. And that person enjoys my culinary delight and enjoys eating my cobbler, and there's a pleasure in the eating of my cobbler for the customer. That makes sense. But for me, after the cobbler is consumed, the pleasure I had in making it dissolves. It's not there. I have to make another one now. Now, I'll take pleasure in making another one, but the pleasure I made in that one is now dissolving. It's minimizing. It's fading away. I still take pleasure in the work creating a culinary delight, but it's the actual result of the cobbler is fleeting. And for the customer who consumes my cobbler, who likes my cobbler, the pleasure of eating it fades. Well, there may be some light memories of a pleasurable dish, but the pleasure in the moment of eating it fades away. The pleasure of eating the cobbler is fleeting. So I take joy in the work, in the creative act of work, and not in the accomplishments of my work. They don't become the end of what I'm searching for. Because what I achieve may rot, rust, break, or be broken, or be taken by somebody else. And if I try to find satisfaction in those things, I'm going to be deeply depressed. I take joy in the act of working as a gift from God. Solomon wants us to understand how a person should view life with respect to work and its fruit. The work is rewarding, but the fruit is fleeting. Very little remains of all of his gardens, his houses. They're fleeting, they're transitory. Joy comes in the act of working for the glory of God. So work is good, it's honorable, it's right, but I cannot make the resultant of my work, an accomplishment, the end in and of itself. No, it's the process of working that's glorifying to God. The resultant may fade, it disappears, gardens are gone, it's all fleeting. But the act of working hard glorifies God. In 1 Corinthians 10, we read this. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. I take joy in the act of working, even though I know the fruit of my work under the sun is not going to remain. But see, that's the key. That's the key. That which I do under the sun, remember we talked about in this worldly realm, that which is temporary and fleeting, that which I do under the sun does not remain. So what's the answer then? I set my mind above the sun. I set my mind in the heavenly realm to that which endures for all time and is eternal. I gain a different perspective. Jesus said it this way: do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. These are the lasting, eternal values that are pleasing to God. So if everything I'm going to do in a sense is fleeting, it's not that work is wrong, I just understand my accomplishments are fleeting. Let's start laying up treasures in heaven, where no one can break in, no one can steal them. Moth and rust will never destroy them. Let's work to the glory of God and for the advancement of his kingdom and lay up treasures in heaven. These things on earth are simply fleeting. So he could not find a rationale for the existence in pleasure and luxury. Couldn't. They were bound to fail, even if his pursuit was mastered by self-control. Again, he's not a drunkard. An anonymous author said, wholesale devotion to pleasure paradoxically leads to a state of utter despair. And Aldous Huxley, which I don't normally quote, although he has some good quotes, here's one. Oh, how desperately bored, in spite of their grim determination to have a good time, the majority of pleasure seekers really are. It will not bring ultimate satisfaction. When pleasure and wealth are the ends in themselves, they cannot satisfy or fulfill a person's life. They're not the ends. They're the means to the ends. And the end is a life lived to the glory of God. J.P. Morgan, in his book, The Lost Virtue of Happiness, says that we are miserable because we have a distorted definition of happiness. We describe happiness as a feeling of pleasure achieved through the gratification of our physical and emotional desires. Underlying that definition is the assumption that our lives are our own and it's up to us to maximize comfort and minimize pain, Epicureanism. According to Moreland, we've got it all wrong. The classical notion of happiness, as oidomia in Greek, was a life well lived. A life of virtue and character, a life that manifests wisdom, kindness, and goodness, not a life consumed with self-gratification. That's what Solomon wants us to understand. Now, does wisdom have an advantage over foolishness, is what he wants to talk about now. Look at verses 12 through 17. So I turn to consider wisdom and madness and folly or foolishness. For what can the man do who comes after the king? Only what has already been done. There is nothing new under the sun. Remember last week? Then I saw that there is more gain in wisdom than in folly, as there is more gain in light than in darkness. The wise person has his eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I perceive that the same event happens to all of them. Then I said in my heart, what happens to the fool will happen to me also. Why then have I been so very wise? And I said in my heart that this also is vanity. For of the wise as of the fool, there is no enduring remembrance, seeing that in the days to come all will have been long forgotten. How the wise dies just like the fool. So I hated life. I'm disgusted with it. Because what is done under the sun was grievous to me for all his vanity and striving after the wind. It's just vaporless. The wise have their eyes open and are therefore able to avoid some disasters in life. Some just come because life happens. But the fool is surprised at events that come his way. He doesn't see, he doesn't have his eyes open. Both the wise and the fool suffer the effects of the fall, namely death, he says. Both die. But the wise knows it and gets prepared for it. The fool has his eyes closed. He's not ready for it. Hopefully you're wise this morning. And then he gives us this, he sums it up. He says, yes, wisdom is much better than folly. Wisdom is much better than foolishness. Seek a life of wisdom, because in wisdom we'll find that what the well-lived life is ordained by God. For the life of wisdom outweighs the life of folly. Henry David Thoreau in his book Walden said this: why should we live with such hurry and waste of life? When we are unhurried and wise, we perceive that only great and worthy things have any permanent and absolute existence. That petty fears and petty pleasures are but the shadow of the reality. He's not even a believer, but he gets it. He gets it. That accomplishment we make in life is just a shadow of the reality. It's fleeting, it's temporary. But that which we lay up in heaven is permanent. It's lasting. The two aspects of the wise and the foolish are equal. Number one, they're both going to die. And number two, they're both going to be forgotten. Well, that's great. Then why be wise? That was his question. If the wise and the fool are both going to be forgotten, why be wise? Death becomes the equalizer. Everything a person acquires is always brought to a futile and abrupt conclusion by death, is what he says. See, another thing the wise and foolish have in common is that they are both forgotten. As I told you last week, I'm not naive enough to think after 2 or 3 generations, if the Lord tarries and I die, anyone's going to remember me. I understand that's not going to happen. I'm going to be forgotten. Mark Twain said it shortly before his death. A myriad of men are born, they labor and sweat and struggle. They squabble and scold and fight. They scramble for little mean advantages over each other. Age creeps upon them, infirmities follow. Those they love are taken from them, and the joy of life is turned to aching grief. The release comes at last, the only unpoisoned gift earth ever had for them. And they vanish from a world where they were of no consequence, a world which will lament them a day and forget them forever. Both the wise and the fool will be forgotten. Here's a truth we can hang our hat on. He wants to wrap it up and tell us, okay, what is a well-lived life? The ends are not pleasure and accomplishments. We know that. And even to be wise is a good thing, but if I bank all my stuff on my intellectual prowess, that's not going to be the answer either. So what's the answer for us? Look at verses 18 through 26. I hated all my toil in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I might leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool? Yet he will be master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. So I turned about and gave my heart up to despair over all the toil of my labor under the sun, because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. They didn't work for it. They didn't earn it. This also is a vanity and a great evil. What has a man from all the toil and striving of heart with which he toils beneath the sun? For all his days are full of sorrow, and his work is a vexation. Even in the night his heart does not rest. This also is vanity. Here now he gives us the answer. There is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, that is God, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy, but to the sinner, he has given the business of gathering and collecting only to give to one who pleases God. This also is vanity and striving after the wind. So what's the answer? What are we to peg our lives on? It's not pleasure and it's not accomplishments in this life. Being wise isn't necessarily the answer. What is it then? We can't control what's going to happen when we die and give an inheritance to somebody that comes after us. They may be wise, they may be a fool. They may use our money wisely, they may squander it in a month. We don't know. There's no control there. So the issue is one of inheritance. The inheritor may be a fool, and the inheritor has no personal investment in what has been made. He is not saying it's wrong to leave an inheritance to your children. That's not what he's saying. It's not what he's saying. As a matter of fact, he wrote in Proverbs 13, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the sinner's wealth is laid up for the righteous. He's basically saying, it's out of my control what's going to happen after I die with everything that I've accomplished, everything that I have made. I pass it on to somebody. They may use it wisely. They may not use it wisely. I can't control that. So what do I peg my life on? It's not that. He is trying to tell us that hard work and well-earned wealth do not validate a person's life. And the question is, when is it enough? Wealth. When is it enough? I think Rockefeller said $1 more. $1 more, then it's enough. When is it enough? An anonymous author wrote, an investment banker was at a pier of a small coastal village when a small boat with just one fisherman docked. Inside the small boat were several large yellow-fin tuna. The banker complimented the fisherman on the quality of his fish and asked how long it took to catch them. The fisherman replied, only a little while. The banker then asked why he didn't stay out longer and catch more fish. The fisherman said he had enough to support his family's immediate needs. The banker then asked, but what do you do with the rest of your time? The fisherman said, I sleep late, fish a little, play with my children, take a nap with my wife, stroll into the village each evening where I play guitar and sing with my friends. I have a full and busy life. The banker scoffed. I'm a Harvard MBA, and I could help you. You should spend more time fishing, and with the proceeds, buy a bigger boat. And with the proceeds from the bigger boat, you could buy several boats. Eventually, you could own a fleet of fishing boats. Instead of selling your catch to a middleman, you could sell it directly to the processor, eventually opening up your own cannery. You could control the product, processing, and distribution. You would need to leave this small coastal village and move to a big city where you can run your expanding enterprise. And the fisherman asked, but how long will all of this take? 15 or 20 years, the banker said. But then what? The banker laughed and said, that's the best part. When the time is right, you can announce an IPO and sell your company stock to the public and become very rich. You could make millions. Millions? Well, then what? And the banker said, then you could retire, move to a small coastal fishing village where you could sleep in late, fish a little, play with your kids, take a nap with your wife, stroll in the village in the evenings where you can play guitar with your friends. When is enough enough? How much life have we missed because enough was not enough for us? Solomon is not so much interested in what happens to his wealth after he dies, but he's interested in what happens to the person who strives after it. That one who strives to achieve wealth. What happens to his life? Is it a well-lived life? Has he not come to the end and said, it's enough? Has he not lived in the moment with his family and his friends and his God? Martin Lloyd-Jones speaks of the totalitarian demand that these things make upon us. He said how they tend to grip the whole personality and affect us everywhere. They demand our entire devotion. They want us to live for them absolutely. The psychotherapist Eric Fromm describes greed is the bottomless pit which exhausts the person in endless effort to satisfy the need without ever reaching satisfaction. When is enough enough? When is it that we say we live life now in the moment for our God, for our family, for our friends, for our church? I experience it now. When is enough enough? See, eat and drink and live in the moment and enjoy life is what Solomon wants to tell us. I'm not really good at that. I'm learning to live in the moment. I'm not a spontaneous person. I like lists and I like structure and I like plans. And he's saying, no, you need to live in the moment. When your son comes and says, Dad, will you watch me play a video game? And you could care less about the video game, but it's important to him, you take the time to watch a video game. I don't even know what he's talking about when he's talking about these video games. He uses phrases, I have no clue what it is. And I'm going, you got to explain this to me, buddy. I have no idea what you're talking about. But I know it pleases him for me to watch him. What about us? Are we living life now in the moment for the glory of God? For our family, for our friends, for our church? Or are we letting life pass by us and making the ends pleasure and satisfaction and accomplishments, when in reality, no, those are the means to the end of a life that is glorifying to God? Eat, drink. Solomon wants us to enjoy life now. True enjoyment is a gift of God. God gives that as a gift. When we realize things that come from the hand of God above the sun, we will seek that which is above the sun. Paul said in Colossians, if you have been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things that are above, not on things on the earth. God is a gift giver. He can reassign the gifts to whoever he wills. So he can take it from the sinner and give it to someone else. It's his gifts to begin with. He can do whatever he wants, the text says. Solomon wants us to understand, without God, life is empty. Living as if God does not exist does not bring satisfaction. The ability to truly enjoy life comes wholly from God. Price Richard wrote, he said, I'm sitting in a quiet room at the Milford Inn, a peaceful little place hidden in the back of some pines outside the city of Toronto. It's just past noon, late July, and I'm listening to the desperate sounds of a life or death struggle going on a few feet away. There's a small fly burning out the last of its short life's energy in a futile attempt to fly through the glass of a window pane. The whining wings tell the poignant story of a fly's strategy. Try harder. But it's not working. The frenzied effort offers no hope for survival. Ironically, the struggle is part of the trap. It's impossible for the fly to try hard enough to succeed at breaking through the glass. Nevertheless, this little insect has staked its life on reaching its goal through raw effort and determination. Its end. This fly is doomed. It will die there on the windowsill. Across the room, 10 steps away, the door is open. 10 seconds of flying time, and this small creature could reach the outside world it seeks. With only a fraction of the effort now being wasted, it could free itself of its self-imposed trap. The breakthrough possibility is there. It would be so easy. Why doesn't the fly try another approach? Something dramatically different. How did it get so locked in on the idea that this particular route and determined effort offer the most promise for success? What logic is there in continuing until death to seek a breakthrough with more of the same? No doubt this approach makes sense to the fly. Regrettably, it's an idea that will kill. Maybe it's time for us to try something different. We've tried finding satisfaction in accomplishments, pleasures. We try to find satisfaction all the places that God says we're never going to find satisfaction in. Maybe it's time to try something different. Maybe it's time to try the well-lived life as ordained by God. Working hard, enjoying the relationships around me, living in the moment, fully aware of everything that's going around me, not missing life. Maybe it's time to try something different. Work hard for the glory of God. Enjoy the life that God has given you. The things that last, the things that are not transitory and fleeting, they are the ones that are important to God. And it's time for us to lay up our treasures in heaven. Let's try something different. Father, we thank you for this word this morning, this wisdom of Solomon, who experimented, who went through the scientific inquiry on what brings true satisfaction to life. Thank you for what he has given to us. May we heed his wise words. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.